Okay, so we do have 4 members of the subcommittee, and what we didn't get to do last month was select a chair to help lead the meetings.
We have 7 or 8 people on our subcommittee,
We have 8.
so we need 5, right?
Should it be 5? Is it +1? I was reading my original email, but you know what? I might have copied and pasted because when there's 7, it's for sure 4.
I see 8 on the email. Sarah Lynn,
Yeah, there's
Tim.
8.
Yeah, Sarah Lynn, Tim, Marie, Kim, Ked.
Okay, so maybe we don't. We're missing Sarah Lynn, Tim, Ked, and Marie Burnett, which Marie did not, she declined the meeting, but I did not hear from the other 3. But yeah, go ahead.
Karen, what was the address for West Rock that you put in? Look.
Me?
Yeah.
I didn't put anything in, but 1010 is what's on the
1010. Okay.
email. I sent Sandra the email.
Okay. I just looked
I'll
it up
try not to get
online.
lost.
I just looked it up online and it went to 2000, which is the plant.
The plant, that's right. It is the admin building is 1010.
There you go.
I know it by heart.
Yes, so we do have that tour scheduled on Thursday, which we appreciate the monthly tours. Alrighty, well, I guess in that case we won't select a chair, but we can carry on, I suppose. I did technically, when there's no quorum, there doesn't really have to be minutes, but I did at least write notes. So if you didn't, and then of course there's always the recordings, but so I don't know if you all want any more of a recap or just jump right in.
Actually, you did a good job at that meeting, and your notes do reflect what transpired. For those 2 of us who were there, Kim.
Yes, and unfortunately, what I planned to do was have presentations, but Andy had agreed from WM had agreed to talk, as well as Todd from Republic. Now, Todd did email me his son had to go to urgent care. I think he broke his elbow or something, which is no good. So he didn't think he'd make it on. But I'm not sure about Andy. So so that kind of puts a damper on the entire meeting.
Why don't you just, which you did last time, but for the others who weren't there, why don't you just recap a couple of the primary things that you're doing educationally? Just give them a brief overview, because it was pretty complete last time.
Yeah, well, trying to think. Let me pull up. I have all kinds of windows open, kind of ready to share. Let me pull up the list of actions again. And you guys let me know if you see anybody jump on that I missed. Let's see. Okay. Can everybody see the screen?
Yeah.
Okay, so these are the actions from the 5-year plan that focus on education. And for collection system and recycling and reuse as 2 different categories, there are marketing programs and outreach programs, and also technical assistance. So when we, let's see, so they kind of go hand in hand. We do want to create toolkits that are going to help in some of these sectors and maybe even specific areas. For example, the multifamily sector we've been working on. So we've talked about that, and I can, I guess for the sake of having something to talk about, we can share a little bit of update on that. And let's see.
And Andy will be right on. I put that in the chat.
Oh, thank you.
Running a few minutes late.
Okay, no problem. So we'll let him give his spiel. So because at the end of last meeting, the idea was to try to get some presentations about educational materials and tools that other organizations or haulers are using, how they're using it to engage the public locally, and any problems that may arise. Because some of the actions here have to do with being consistent, standardizing some of our images or messaging. So I think Sandra had suggested having some presentations from others, and I think that's a good place to start.
Partially because we had talked about not reinventing the wheel.
Right. But there's a lot of material out there. And so, right, we're definitely not wanting to reinvent any wheels, but it is going to be, I think, a bit of a task to figure out the best way to align everything. I was looking at this, the bottom one there, create a roadmap to standardizing solid waste management messaging across the area, in partnership with collection, disposal, MRFs, and then of course the recycling partnership is a great tool and a group to work with, and then the marketing firm. So, and the fact that it says create a roadmap, I think that's something as a group to kind of discuss and think about how to go about doing that. Some of these other things like the toolkits and stuff, I think that's some of the things that we are just kind of working on behind the scenes over here. Sandra, did you have anything else you wanted to say about any of these particular actions or even what we talked about last month?
No.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing that one. And I see Andy's on here now. Andy, are you ready to share with us?
Sure. Yeah, and I'm sorry that I'm late. I got stuck on on another call.
No problem.
Yeah, so I mean, Karen had reached out and asked me if I would be able to show some of the things that WM uses in terms of educational resources for our customers. And it's actually not strictly, it has our branding on it, but none of it is, exclusive to our customers. I mean, anybody is welcome to use it. We have a website or a page on our website that is just wm.com/recycleright. And that has a lot of different educational videos and materials for single family residential, multifamily residential, commercial. But all of it also has printable resources, downloadable resources that anybody can use to share. In a lot of places, we actually give our municipal customers permission to use any of that material, like the city of Nashville uses that material. They just take our WM logo off because they have other, we own and operate the recycling facility in Nashville, but we are not the exclusive hauler for Metro Nashville. So regardless of who, what company somebody uses, all of the material comes to our facility. So, we are able to tell people what's accepted, what's not accepted, and try to give them information on contamination and things like that. So let's see. Okay. So this is just a couple of screen pages. I don't want to to go into too much depth here, but this right here, did my screen show up yet? Or
Yes.
okay.
Thank you.
So this is the when you type in wm.com/recycle right, it comes up with a longer URL, but this is where it comes from. And the page just shows, recycling for home is where you start. But if you scroll down, you can see we've got some videos about, just various things and things that you can do in the office or at home to try to save space and things like that. But below that is really where the meat of it is. You've got different posters like what's recyclable at home, what's recyclable at home if glass is not accepted. You can see the little download button next to all of them. In some places, obviously not in Louisville, but Karen knows we get some confusion with WM customer service reps. In some parts of the country, they may not have a buyer for glass, or if WM doesn't own the recycling facility, some MRFs don't take glass. So just trying to provide different resources for people regardless of what their MRF takes. Some information about contaminants. And just scrolling down, I don't want to, there are a lot of different tools here. We've got some things for kids as well, so that it's more oriented toward even curriculum and art activities for schools, daycare, summer programs, things like that, from K through 5, just to explain recycling and give some breakdowns. But also just wanted to show what some of these things look like. So right here is the Recycle Right container label. This is something that you can print off to show people. You can actually stick it on a recycling cart. If you laminate it or make it into a magnet that shows, or turn it into a sticker, what goes in, what stays out. Just so every time they open the lid, they can see what's there. Some of these we're actually going through and updating all of this branding material. It has the link right here to wm.com/recycle right, but we're actually putting a QR code on all of them now as well. On every invoice that we send out, there's a QR code that links to Recycle Right, so that people can have, are directed toward this material more actively. We've got some, very basic stuff like, hey, if you really want this in an elevator pitch, as you're walking off the elevator, here's what to recycle, here's what to keep out, don't put it in a bag. If you can follow those 3 basic rules, then you're going to have a much better likelihood of not contaminating things and increasing diversion rate, by following those things. We also have some things specifically for multifamily residential. So if you live in a multifamily residence that does not recycle, here's what you need to do to try to set that up. Things to check on for yourself, things to ask your landlord or your building manager, things to reach out if if you're open market and you just want to contact a trash company to try to set up recycling collection. This is sort of a checklist to walk through of okay, what do I need to do to make sure that we have space to recycle, that we have all the information we need to be able to set up a recycling system. And then we even have things like a door hanger, like, here, welcome to the building. Hey, we recycle. Here's where the recycling is. Here's what you need to do. Here's what's accepted. Here's what's not accepted. Nothing about this is really revolutionary. I mean, it's, just the same information that you see from Metro in a lot of places, right? But, we have a lot of customers nationwide. We're the largest recycler in North America. Just wanting to make sure that we provide our customers, our sales reps, our customer service reps with as many resources as possible to try to make sure that people are recycling, and that when people have questions, because they inevitably do, here's what they need to have access to. So happy to answer any questions or go into more detail about anything, but didn't want to bore everybody to tears with, just sort of the Taco Bell menu of recycling, right? The same 5 messages and different orders with different numbers next to them.
Did I lose him or did he stop talking?
Oh, I stopped talking. Sorry,
Okay,
I
good.
didn't know if people were. Yeah, sorry
Sorry,
about that.
just sort of.
That hurts.
No, I think this is great, Andy, and I've definitely perused the WM website. Actually, but I don't think I've seen. I don't know if it's been added to since I happened upon it, but I hadn't seen the door hanger and things like that. So
Yeah. Yeah, and so just if you go through, everything should be sorted by type, right? There's
Yeah.
posters and guides, container labels. There's organics material as well, so organics recycling in addition to your sort of standard single stream, multifamily things, fact sheets. Like if you're trying to convince somebody this is why you should this is why you should be recycling, newsletter, templates, things like that, and then resources for kids.
So I kind of have multifamily on the brain because we have, been actively working on that. Who, do you have staff, or are you one that would go, or like, is it the salesperson or whatever, like to talk to, like, which way does it go? Do you
Yeah.
guys try to encourage recycling, or are they
Yes.
coming to you saying
So
we want recycling?
yeah, yes to both. So I mean, we have right now in Louisville, we have about that are serviced from our Louisville hauling company. So that's going to include places like Lebanon Junction and Hillview and Pioneer Village and places that are a little bit outside of Louisville as well. But we have around 80,000 residential customers in Louisville. So we have a lot of customers. We can't proactively go talk to all of them, but as a company right now, our directive nationwide is to double our recycling volumes that are collected residentially and commercially. Not to try to focus on commercial and get a bunch of commercial or industrial that weighs a lot more and say we doubled it, but to double by each line of business. So we're trying to encourage recycling where and whenever possible. It really depends on the kind of account it is, which I know sounds very corporate, but if it's a municipal customer, or an HOA, then it's going to be me that goes and talks to them. If it's an apartment complex or a condo complex, it's going to be the sales rep or the account executive that manages their account. And generally, it's going to be somebody from operations as well. If they're picked up in carts, then it's going to be our residential route manager. If it's dumpsters, it's going to be our commercial manager, just to make sure that operationally, they understand what kind of space they need, what container size and collection frequency they would need, and we can always change those things. But a lot of times people just don't know. I mean, why would they, right? They don't know what their requirements are to be able to meet the needs of people in 200 apartments or 20 apartments.
Do you ever have a mix of dumpster for garbage and carts for recycling?
Yeah, we actually, if you drive through Audubon Park, and it's really pretty this time of year, anyway, they have 5 or 6 different apartment and condo units there. We generally have rolling dumpsters for trash and recycle carts, just because their corrals are too small to have commercial recycling dumpsters.
Yeah, that's what we find, that the infrastructure wasn't there to begin with, so it's hard to kind of retrofit.
Yeah, I mean that's something we have been the hauler for Norton Commons for the last 10 years or so, and if you look at the areas that they built for multifamily, they did not anticipate trash needs at all. So we've spent a lot of time, over the last several years trying to figure out how to provide recycling service for facilities that don't have trash corrals, much less recycling. And that's, with limited space, it can be very difficult. So it's really important when you're building a facility or planning a facility to have those things in mind up front. We can figure out a way to work it on the back end, but it could be constrained. It can be difficult to find the right mix. It can end up being messy. You just have 30 recycling carts, in an area that people have to walk around and figure out which ones are empty and which ones are full, just because not enough planning was done at the start,
Right.
to know where stuff was going to be.
I noticed the tote bags. Do you as far as I guess an option for tenants to use a tote bag to collect and then
Yeah,
Is-
I mean, that's
is-
something that we provide. We offer tote bags, or as we've started phasing out the 18-gallon recycle bins, those have either been recycled themselves or we're offering them to people as a way to to keep that in their apartment or in their house to carry their recycling out. Because one of the things you end up doing is you don't want to have a gross. I have one of the pull-out trash pull out trash can areas in my kitchen, and that's where the recycling goes. But it's like, well, do you want to let the stuff sit and be disgusting, or do you put a trash bag in and then empty the trash bag into the recycle, and then throw the trash bag away, and now you've added extra waste. So having a tote bag or having some other option like an old small recycle bin can help quite a bit.
Yeah. Do you all sell those or do you just have them?
We
rent?
basically just have them. If somebody asks for them, we can provide them. That's something that we don't get a lot of requests for. I think mostly just because people don't know they're there. It's probably something
Yeah.
we need to market a little bit more, just to say, hey, if you guys want this, we can provide it.
Yeah, it came up at yesterday. We met at an apartment complex, and that I knew I had seen it somewhere, and I think it was on the WM
Yeah.
website. But it came up as a possible option was totes to make sure that they had a place to collect their recycling. So that's good. Does anybody else have questions for Andy?
It was good. I just have one suggestion, maybe.
Mhm.
One of your slides had a green rectangle, I think, for the recycling and 2 red boxes for the bad stuff.
Yeah.
And that was good. That way people can see it. One of the slides prior to that had a row of here's what's accepted, and then below that, here's what's not. And there was no color or any differential between the two. And what I've noticed, a lot of people just take a quick look at something and they'll see that plastic bag and then they throw it in because they think it can be. So just a suggestion, maybe that slide that had those 2 rows, make the one a little bit different color or
Sure.
some type of way of differentiating besides just the pictures, because again, we're the educated ones that know what's going on. But when general person walks up and sees, they sometimes just see something quick.
And I'm gonna share this again really quickly, just so you
Yeah.
can see
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
this look. I think this is the one that you were talking about, and this
Yeah.
one is intended to be the recycling container label.
Okay.
So I'm sure, and I'm not saying that what you're suggesting is not a good suggestion, because I think it is. They tried to reuse the little green triangle down here and the red hexagon here as
Yeah.
well, but yeah, I think it can get lost.
Right.
in
When
the-
you look
in the
quick, you
shuffle.
just right. You look quick and you're
Yeah.
just seeing, okay, so maybe a bigger bar across it or
Sure.
something just to differentiate it.
I know on the recycling partnerships kind of basic images like that they produce has just like a single
Yeah.
little red line through, which doesn't take away from the image so much, but helps.
Well, and that's honestly
differentiate
what
that.
we used to have, and that
Mhm.
a lot of these have changed in the last 3 months, 6 months. They're constantly, I'll say in air quotes, improving these. But like, and here's another example. Like this is more, I think, what Greg was looking for. That it's a similar, but at least it uses the same.
Like
you know,
behind, yeah.
Yeah, behind, and it doesn't even say don't recycle. It just says here's if it's proactive recycling, here's what goes in. Don't put anything in that's not on this list.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's always room for improvement, because even this list, right? Okay, what's the red hexagon mean? You've removed all of the things you're not supposed to put in that have a red hexagon behind them. Why is there a red hexagon there? So yeah, I mean, we can always improve what
Right.
what's
It's a constant battle, but that's
Yeah.
just a suggestion, right?
job security for graphic designers.
Right. And then one other thing I want to mention, I think I've worked as what's called a trash talker at the LIBA events, Louisville Independent Business Association. And here you've got a bunch of good, well-meaning people, and they walk up to the 2 bins. And if we weren't standing there, if so many people, it's about 50-50, they throw stuff in the wrong bins. So we stand there and say, and help them. Sometimes they give it to us. Sometimes we just show them to it. And it's amazing. They seem to really catch on. They look at it and they're very thankful. We've never had a bad incident. So I'm wondering if we could start doing that at public events, because then it also helps Andy with our home stuff. At public events, if we could do more like that, whether we would volunteer just from, people ask for volunteers just through like Karen's organization or ask Waste Management to help with somebody. I don't know how we would do that. LIBA handles it themselves, but I really think sometimes we have volunteers doing stuff throughout the neighborhoods, but volunteers at big events to help train and teach and help people. I think then they go home and they learn how to do it better also. So in my work with that, I have found that to be very effective. So I think if it's something that we could help promote also, that would be great.
Yeah, very much so. And one thing that we found to be really helpful as we made the switch from 18-gallon recycle bins to 96-gallon carts is any of those city customers. We had like the city of Strathmore Village that had a food truck night. So they had, food trucks had me come out, and just bring some carts and have some of the flyers to show to people and say, look, you have a large cart now. That's great. But the same stuff goes in it. Make sure you're putting the right stuff in.
Right.
Just trying to get in front of people when and wherever possible.
Right.
Yeah.
Like there's a beach umbrella on our alley now in a cart.
Andy,
That seems
I have
more
a
like a
question.
reuse option, Greg, than a recycle.
Right.
But-
Right.
I have a question. It's Diane.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I may have missed what you were talking about, but were you saying that where do you take your recycling here in Louisville?
We take our recycling to West Rock in
Okay.
Louisville.
My other question is the descriptions. You were talking about the branding, the descriptions of what's recyclable. On your website, it's a broad national things to recycle. Is that correct?
Yes, and the reason that there are the two breakdowns with glass and without glass is that generally speaking, I mean, there are some fine nuances in different places, but the overwhelming majority of material that's accepted at MRFs, there are essentially two types of MRFs, those that accept glass and those that don't. And outside of that, you might have some instances where number 5 plastics are accepted and some places where they're not, but that can be more supplemental, and that tends to change more frequently. Nashville in the last 2 years has had 6 months where number 5 plastics weren't accepted because the buyer for that material shut down, and we had to find a new buyer. So none of it is ever going to be complete from our end, but we try to keep a list locally of everything that is accepted at each MRF that we can provide. We may just have to adapt some of the flyers or some of the imagery.
Are your call centers up to date with that list as well? So if I was a WM customer and I lived here in Louisville, I said, well, I don't know what to recycle. Would they say, oh yeah, you can do this, this, and this?
Well,
Or
after
would they
the
just
last
look
time
on
that
the-
Karen pointed out that one of the, sometimes you'll just get a customer service rep that looks up the wrong information and it says the wrong thing. But, currently everything, we have an internal system that we use called Green Pages, that if somebody calls in and says, I'm in the city of Louisville, or even I'm in the city of Audubon Park or Hillview, that will bring up their scope of services, what services we provide, what the pricing is, what's accepted in recycling, bulk items that we take, restrictions on those like mattresses having to be wrapped. So when they call in, they can look at their account number and their address and say, okay, this is what's accepted in your recycling. This is what kind of recycling service you have. It's a 96-gallon cart. It's every other week. It's collected on Tuesday. They can provide all of that information, even down to an HOA contract or a small city contract that might have 50 homes. Ideally, again, there's always going to be cases where they're given bad information.
It's just a challenge. Such a
Yeah.
big company and so many different rules all across the nation. So, but yeah, that's one good reason, to just sort of partner. It's like I have a contact. So someone reaches me and I say, oh, I can find out for you, or I know who to ask. So it's good. So yeah, these are really good tools. Another question that I think Sandra had suggested last month to add is any problems, or like what kinds of problems arise if you, I mean, logistics, I think with the maybe where to place carts or dumpsters or whatever could be an issue. What kinds of things do you run into if you're doing outreach?
Well, a lot of it right now, to be frank, is expense related. People don't understand right now that recycling has a cost. I think there's an expectation from people that, hey, you guys get a rebate for this stuff. You all are making money by recycling, so you should be offering this for free, or paying me to recycle. And I think I know that sounds sort of ridiculous, and it's not really about the act of recycling itself, but trying to explain to people that, hey, this is a beneficial service, but it does actually incur expense. And the rebate that we get back, we get a blended rate from WestRock. That's, I think, the same blended rate or close to that everybody else gets. That's based on the commodity pricing and volume that they sell, so the value and the expenses that they have, and they come back and say, hey, your price is $35 a ton or $40 per ton. Everyone is still paying to recycle. So just, trying to get over that hurdle with people that need to be convinced, because you really have two groups of people: the people like me that are going to recycle regardless and just say, hey, I want to recycle because I want to recover this material and I want to keep it out of a landfill, and it needs to be, it needs to go where it's supposed to go. And other people that need a push, a little bit, and the push of saying, hey, it's still got to cost something, but it's still a beneficial service. Is a big deal, especially with city contracts and things like that, where you might have cities that are on a budget, and don't want to, especially, the cost of everything is rising right now. They may have a certain amount of revenue they bring in from their city taxes. That's all they have that they can provide, as a service. So trying logistically to come up with alternatives that that don't disincentivize recycling. If we disconnect the recycling part of a contract from a municipal agreement because the city only has enough money or only wants to spend money on trash collection, what do we do to keep residents in those cities recycling? Because if you make it open market, if you make it an optional service, we find that it's much better served as all or nothing. In a city contract, if you offer recycling, offer it to everyone rather than offering it as an optional service. It's more efficient for us, and we can keep costs down, to the city or the HOA. That's been a huge help. It seems counterintuitive to the city or the HOA, but if you're only picking up 30% of the homes because those people were proactive about signing up for recycling, then the costs are going to go up.
That's interesting.
I think one of the other things that we were kind of wondering is, if we're talking about educating, what do you think would be the primary beneficial focus of it? What would you target first, or what group would you target first?
Well, there's so many different ways to go about it. I'm not trying to hedge the answer, but I know that multifamily recycling rates are low. They're lower than residential rates. So you would say, okay, let's start there. But then you have more hurdles to that than you do. I mean, again, some of the issues are legitimate with saying, we don't have space for that. And it may not be the group that's currently managing the property that's responsible for that. They may not have built that condo complex or that fourplex, and there's just no space to put, additional facilities. I think I'm inclined to say that a lot of it still needs to be contamination focused and materials education in terms of what can go where. Also letting people know, as we, Waste Management right now is moving from rear load vehicles with a driver and a helper to automated side loader vehicles with one driver. It's a right-hand drive vehicle and a lift arm. What's great about that is we can always pick up the large recycling carts, the 96-gallon carts, but it means if somebody has material that's outside of the cart, we can't get it. We won't be able to pick it up because the opening is above the truck. So what do people do with broken down cardboard? If it won't fit in their recycle cart, they need to know, one, that they can always get another container, or that there are drop-off facilities around town. Like I end up taking broken down boxes up to Bowman Field. I live in the Highlands. I mean, it's an inconvenience. It's 5 minutes away, but that's how it's going to get picked up. It's not going to go in the trash cart. So I think letting people know what resources are available to them to either get additional containers or how to dispose of things that in the past, even though people might have had an 18-gallon bin and we might have been getting less recycling volume, that now are potentially going to fall through the cracks as we change the service level, even though going from an 18-gallon bin once a week is significantly less volume on a weekly basis than a 96-gallon cart every other week, which is effectively 48 gallons. Now you've got material types that don't fit in the cart. What do you do with it?
Yeah, we had historically not used automated trucks on recycling routes, but now that we have all carts, they're able to do that, and we're finding some similar challenges with, the cardboard getting stuck inside, or
Yeah.
store-bought containers that we do allow people to use, but then they can't, lift those. So definitely challenges there.
Andy,
Yeah,
do
so-
you
yeah.
charge for the second containers, or is it like put on there
We
monthly?
do. I mean, right now our monthly rate for recycling in Louisville, we effectively charge the same rate for a second cart. We're trying right now to incentivize people to recycle by lowering our recycling, our charge for a first cart. So it's the same fee, but it basically just covers the cost of the cart. The carts cost us about $60 each before you figure in delivery and labor to get them out to people. So if we usually have 3 to 5 year contracts with residents. If you're looking at $2, $3 a month for for another recycling cart, you're effectively just paying for the cart over the course of the contract. So it's real. I know everybody, looks at it and thinks they're being nickel and dimed. And I mean, I get it. Like I'm on the receiving end of that on a lot of things as well. But it's, once you realize that it's $60 a cart, it's like, yeah, that takes a while to pay that off.
Yeah.
And you'll be shocked to know that people don't want to use a used cart ever, even if it's just recycling that's been washed out.
Yeah, Andy, they
Yeah.
We
don't.
know. We know.
There's a scuff right on the side. How could you put that in front of my house?
Even if you spray good smelling orangey stuff in there, they still don't like it.
Air freshener and everything.
Is that the brand name of the air freshener? Good smelling orangey stuff.
Good smelling orangey stuff. Yeah. It's funny. Yeah.
I was thinking as you were talking, Andy, about, suggestions or thoughts on where to start. The other subcommittee is what we're going to talk about today is capture rate studies, which it won't be the first time we've talked about it. It's just been a little while since we've talked about it. And they're the contract subcommittee. So hopefully we can get an RFP written, but that would be one of the reasons to do a capture rate study is to help inform outreach and educational campaigns. So they really go hand in hand. So that makes sense. You kind of have to know a little bit about what's going on to know what to target, whether it's going to be contamination or things you're not capturing like you want to.
Yeah, and I know that, and I'm sorry, I always use Nashville as an example, but that's the other sort of big city that, that falls under me. They were at about 41 or 42% contamination at the beginning of last year. And at the end of the last year, they were down to 22 or 23%. So again, I don't think Louisville is anywhere near that high. Nashville was collecting curbside recycling once a month, which is insanity. But I think through education, focusing the education on what the needs are and what the numbers tell you, while using some common sense about it. You can have some data driven depth by just saying, here's what the numbers say, so we've got to do it. Combine that with some common sense, and you can see some significant improvements.
What's your most common contamination?
It depends on if it's by impact or by volume. I mean, greasy pizza boxes, stuff like that. Food contamination tends to be the biggest contaminant. But I would say the biggest issue is trash bags, Kroger bags, just from the standpoint of what it does at the sorting facility.
Yeah, and we just, as an update on our end, we had piloted our Recycle Right kind of OOPS tag program, and we're finally kind of had a delay while we waited for a vehicle that they would use, but so we hadn't hired the part-timers that we want to do that program officially, but we're back on track with that and doing some interviews tomorrow. So that's exciting too, because I mean, along with Capture Rate Study, that Recycle Right OOPS tag program will also inform us, as to some of our outreach campaigns we need to do.
Yeah, well, thanks everybody. Hopefully that was informative and not, a waste of 20 minutes.
No, absolutely. I think that was great, Andy. And hopefully next month, Hillary from Rumpke, I don't think it will be her because she'll be out of town, but she said she'd have someone kind of do a similar thing for us, if that's okay for the agenda next month. And then Todd, of course, wasn't able to come today, so maybe he can next month. But and I will say, I recently had a similar issue with Republic on accepted items and, using a big national website, and it wasn't quite on track. So anyway, we can talk about that more again next time, I guess. I was going to quickly share this image, and if Brian Slade is still on here, you can appreciate this. We had gone out to Brentlinger Park, is a apartment complex that's pretty new. Ecotech is their hauler, and we had gone out there just to go through the motions of kind of that outreach to add recycling and see what kinds of issues they would have. But I got on the Recycling Partnerships DIY signs again, just to try it out. And this is what I made really quickly. I just stole this off the internet, but it's like a logo that you can add. And then they had just considered the idea of those tote bags, kind of like WM provides. And so you could change your image there and then show it being, if they choose to do carts, because that was what we talked about, maybe they already have trash dumpsters, but maybe rolling carts would be better to add for recycling because we don't have room for more dumpsters. So I just thought it was kind of cool because you could change the images to fit your needs and change the words. So
What is that black thing that we're not supposed to do? I'm not good at icons. Yeah.
It's a plastic bag.
Like a grocery bag.
You might be able to see it. Can you see it a little better? It's a grocery bag with little handles.
Yeah, half the time I can't interpret an icon, and that was definitely not my repertoire. Thank you.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah. Anyway, because of the fact that we were, talking about toolkits and different things like that, I thought, okay, I'm going to get back on the partnerships website and try this out. And I don't know. I kind of prefer images over icons, but this was what they had going. I don't know if you could change it to images. I didn't play with it that far, but anyway, just thinking ahead of ways that we can help along. But I'm going to look at the WM stuff more because I did see that there was a lot more on the website than the last time I had been on there. So that's great. All right, anything else?
We don't need a motion to dismiss.
No, we didn't even have to be here.
Exactly.
I will announce or let you know next week we are having a full advisory committee. We're doing those every other month. So we didn't do April, but we're back on for May 17th. I believe that's the date. Yes, May 17th. And then of course the board meeting will be the week after if you choose to join in on that. And then we'll have this subcommittee again in June 13th, I believe it is. If there's nothing else, then we'll just take our little 10-minute break here before the next subcommittee. If you're planning to join, we'll see you there.
Hi.
All right. Thank you all.
Do we need to sign off and sign back on with a different link, Karen?
Yes, sorry.
Thanks.
Thanks.